Hello and welcome to the How to Get Church Visitors with Your Website webinar. So today, just like the title says, we're talking about how to use your church website to get more visitors. And there's really two types of visitors we're going to be talking about today. First off is, let's just define the two types, right? So first kind of visitor is someone visiting your website. This is someone, for however they found out your website, they're visiting it and they're looking at it. So that's the main visitor. We're going to call it the website visitor. And then secondly, there is the actual visitor to your church, someone who shows up on a Sunday. It could be a Wednesday. We're going to use Sunday as the example. So those are, I'm going to call Sunday visitors. So we're going to be talking about a few different things. The first part is, we're going to talk a little bit about how to get more visitors to your church website. And that's just going to be a small part of it. And the majority of what we're going to be talking about is how to convert those visitors that you're already getting over into someone who's going to become a Sunday visitor. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how to take a Sunday visitor and turn them into an actual someone who attends your church and then ultimately becomes a member. So we have a lot to cover. So I'm going to get started here. And yeah, let's just get started. So first off, who am I? Let's give a little bit about me. So I started off as a media minister, actually, at my home church in my hometown. Excuse me. And I've always had a passion. I wanted to, for drawing and was very interested in video stuff. My dad was a youth pastor. The majority of the time, like growing up, but off and on. But the majority of the time I grew up, he was a youth pastor. And when I actually got into youth myself, because I was always the kid, who got to hang out with the teenagers, because my parents were the youth pastors. But he was actually my youth pastor as well. So he happened to be the youth pastor when I got into high school. And he was always trying to push the boundaries. He was always wanting to use like technology and things. So like I remember being, in the early 90s, he had a projector, like old school projector. This thing was like in a wood box. He'd roll it out and he would play like Carmen music videos. And, we had a Donkey Kong video game system and ping pong, just, all the quintessential 90s youth stuff, right? So I came from that background, and his goal was, or not his goal, but at one point when I was in youth group, he wanted to create a music video. So he picked a Christian song that we were practicing, but he didn't really have the actual videos and editing skills, and at the time, the equipment wasn't very good either. So he had this dream, and he wasn't able to quite. I remember we never actually finished that music video, but we always had these conversations. We'd go to youth convention and we'd see the videos they would play before youth convention, and we'd talk about it, and because he wanted to be able to incorporate that kind of stuff into the services. And so I got really interested in that, and I was actually I was an artist. I wanted to, draw comics and have my own comic book company and have like it as a way to witness to people, people who don't go to church but would read comics. And when I got into high school, I got into a trade school, and I had to choose between graphics and video. And I wanted to do graphics because, like I said, my entire goal was to get better at drawing comics. I knew that the only way to get, I've been working, the one way to get better was to start doing like the professional, shading and coloring, which I needed to learn Photoshop and, all that kind of stuff. But I went ahead and chose the video track because then I knew I could use my video skills to help out around church. I could, for one thing, produce these videos, for my dad in the youth ministry. So a little while later, I actually got asked by our pastor to take over the media ministry. And at the time, it was pretty small. It was just one guy with an old camera and some tapes and a little wooden box that they built that he would stand on, camera on a tripod. He'd record the services. All the editing was done in camera, and we had a little 30-minute show that would go on to cable, onto air. And then eventually got increased to 1 hour. And so it was like kind of like more for the shut-ins, like who were in convalescent homes or at home and couldn't make it out. And so we produced the service. We had a lot of people who'd watch it. And it wasn't online, like the whole, YouTube hadn't been bought by Google yet. It wasn't a thing. There wasn't Vimeo and all these streaming services. So that was like our version of having, our own podcast and YouTube of the show. So I started as a media minister, and I did that for a very long time and really got into all that. Eventually became a youth pastor first in my home church, and then I kind of worked my way up from volunteer to helping to leadership back in high school, junior high pastor, interim youth pastor, became the actual full-time youth pastor, and then I went on from there. I got involved with a youth pastor training program our district offered, and youth pastored at a couple different churches in Northern California. And I'm actually from the Northern California, Nevada district. And then from there, I got into being an entrepreneur, and that kind of started. That's a long story, so I won't go into that. But I got into this whole idea of creating a business and learning about that. And so that's the world I'm currently in. I spend most of my time in is working with other business owners, coaching, training, helping them, set stuff up, helping them with sales funnels and set up marketing campaigns. And my specialty is really helping them convert the traffic they're getting into customers. So I do a little bit of helping them get traffic with, paid per click ads and stuff like that. But it's really not my specialty. My specialty really lies more in once they're getting customers to their website, actually converting those from just visitors to leads and then sales. So with that said, like I said in my original post, if you saw that, if that's how you came to this webinar, is I spent a lot of time talking to. I've got several pastors in the area who are friends of mine, excuse me, and just have the conversation about how like 90% of this stuff would apply to like the churches could use to increase their websites and all the different stuff they could do. So that's kind of how this came about. Is I just wanted to take a lot of the stuff that I've learned and I'm using in the business world, in the online world, and help out some pastors with what they're doing. So with that said, let's begin. Let's get started. So the first thing is, and we're going to touch on this just kind of briefly, getting people to your website. So the thing is, you want to show up obviously and just dominate local search. So when someone looks for a church, I mean in the old days I guess it was the phone book, but now they go to a search engine, whether it be Google, Yahoo, Bing, or whatever else they have. Google actually is the largest, and I believe the last I checked, it's somewhere around, I know it's over 60% of the market share. I think it's closer to like 70 or 80, but I don't remember off the top of my head. So anyways, they go to Google, Yahoo, Bing, whatever it is they have, and they type in churches. Sometimes they'll just put churches or churches in and name their city. So if I lived in Texas, or let's say if I lived in Austin, Texas, I would put churches in Austin or churches in Austin, Texas. And then what do you do next? Or what do they do next? So a bunch of churches pop up, right? So they go through the first page and click on a few of the links, kind of one by one, and kind of start going through the websites and just kind of judging, okay, which church looks the best, which one will I view? And it's kind of one of those, it's generally not the kind of thing where someone's spending a lot of time doing research, right? They just find the first one that looks passable, like, oh yeah, this one looks interesting, and they're going to go. So it's kind of a race game at that point to get your link noticed and get them to look at your site and your site to be good enough and interesting enough for them to decide to show up. And again, that's their big question is, what church should I visit? And they're just looking for a quick answer on that. And so they're looking for the first person to convince them to visit. And of course, obviously, the odds are that the first church they visit, they have the best chance of getting that person as a continued visitor. It's unlikely that this person's going to visit 3, 4, 5 churches to figure it out. Like if they find a church they like, they're going to stay there. No one likes visiting churches just for the fun of it. It's awkward. You're not sure what you're walking into. There's just a lot of uncomfortable things when you walk into a new church for the first time. So if they walk in a church that's, even a B- on the grading level, they're going to stick around for a few weeks and try it out because they're already there. Okay, so the thing is, one of the ways to really get these visitors, one, to your website, and also from your website to get them to actually want to show up is going to be what is called in the online world content marketing. And that's stuff like blogs, podcasts, videos, basically any kind of content that you're creating and putting out there that people can find. That's content. So you're using content marketing. And the whole idea behind content marketing, first off, I will say it's not SEO. That's search engine optimization. So we're not talking about SEO. That's a whole nother subject, and that's a whole nother specialty, and that's not something that we're going to be really talking about today. Though there's some elements into it, and like content marketing is a good way to climb up the ranks in SEO. We're not getting into any of the technical stuff. Content is the current currency of the internet. So the whole idea there is, right now, if you want an online presence, you have to be producing content. You have to be producing good content. There's just no other way about it. It is the current currency of the internet. And it's got to be high quality and useful. I mean, content doesn't mean, you can't, okay, so technically if you took a picture of your bulletin, you scanned your bulletin you produce every week, posted it online on your website, and then shared it to all your social networks, okay, that technically is content. But it's not good content because no one cares, right? Now maybe there's your members, but then even then there's a better way to do it than just posting a picture of your bulletin. Something that people are going to find that's going to help them. It's going to solve a problem. It's going to answer a question, and it's going to be considered useful. And the whole point of this is you want to build the know, like, and trust factor. And content marketing is, other than hanging out with the person in person, is the best way online to build know, like, and trust. So the thing is, they start to know you. So you want to become an expert in your industry. So if you are a church I'm just going to keep using Austin. I got a couple of entrepreneur buddies in Austin. So as an example, if you are a church in Austin, Texas, you need to, what being an expert in that industry means, when they search for a church, or they're asking people, talking to people about churches in Austin, you're the first one that comes to mind. It doesn't mean you have to be the biggest or have the most money. You just have to be, dominating in the whole content marketing, getting the word out there. So, no, they know you. They know the name of your church. They know the reputation of your church. They have to like it. So, obviously, a lot of people know about Westboro Baptist. So, they got the first one down, right? People know them. No one likes them. It's literally a family of 96 people who all go to this same church. They're all family. No one likes them. People hate them. So, people aren't going there just because they know them. So, they have to like you. No, the second one is like. You have to have some sort of rapport, right? And the third one is trust, that they trust you. So normally online, this would mean that they trust you they feel comfortable spending money with you, right? That they're not going to buy your product and it's going to just be junk and not help them make money and be successful in their business. So in the church world, they have to trust you with, first off, showing up, right? One big fear a lot of people have is being rejected. So they show up in church, and there's tons of stories of people getting chewed out because they're not dressed right. I've heard story after story of, single mom shows up because she happens to just have a Sunday off from working at the grocery store or McDonald's or something. She shows up and gets chewed out by her board member because she's in jeans and a t-shirt and her hair's in a ponytail, and she's not, we wear our Sunday best for God, that kind of thing. There's a lot of issues. That's just one example. So know, like, trust. Content marketing is going to help because they're going to find your website, so they're going to know about you. They're going to see your content. They're going to be able to listen to your messages, see videos of your worship service, read blog articles from the pastor, all of this stuff about your church. So then they're going to start to like you. And if they don't, then obviously they don't. But then they're going to start, that's just not a good fit anyways. They were still going to figure that out after they showed up. So then they start to like you. And then once they really get to know your church more, they get to know the heart of your church. They get to know, the heart of the pastor. And they can see, stuff going on in the kids ministry, just all this stuff, pictures of, the youth going to youth camp and all these things. They start to trust you, right? It's a hard thing. I'll tell you, as a father of 2 young children, one of the hardest things about visiting a church is feeling comfortable putting your kids in the nursery. And then also kids' church, but even specifically nursery. We've had some very bad experiences with visiting a church with horrible nurseries, to the point where I'm should we just grab our kids and leave? Obviously that's extremely uncomfortable to do, but it would probably be better than, so we've just, No, like, trust. You can really do that with content marketing very well. So that way they feel much more comfortable when they show up. And of course, getting them to show up. So here's some ideas on creating content. If you're thinking, okay, so how do I create content? What does that mean? What is content? How do I do it? Here's some categories: sermons, Bible study, announcements, testimonies. These aren't the only areas you could do this, but ways you can take these things that are obviously commonplace around a church and turning them into content. So first off, sermons. I mean, you're preaching at the very least once a week. A lot of churches, if you still have a Sunday night service, you've got 2 sermons on Sunday. If you have a Wednesday night service, there's a good chance that you've got either another sermon or some sort of Bible study you're doing. So ways you can turn this stuff that you're already doing and leverage it into content would be, so for sermons, first off, create a podcast of your sermons. That way people can subscribe and listen. First off, when they go to your website, they want to know, what is the preaching like? Can I relate to it? Is it good? Am I, that kind of stuff. They have all these questions. Have it right on your website, a link to it, so they can listen to your sermons, and you can post the content there. Have it in iTunes. I mean, that helps with the whole expert status, thing. And so in this case, they're not looking for an expert, but they're looking for, like, if it's a good church, well, if they're in iTunes, I mean, most people associate it with being good. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean that, because, I mean, you could have the worst, driest preaching ever and still get a podcast on iTunes, but it adds to that. It helps people feel more comfortable. Oh, they've got a podcast on iTunes of their service. And then ultimately it gives them the ability to listen to it. And it's something for you and your staff and your members to share. So I'm not really talking about social media marketing at this point, but the content is stuff that you can use to share, and it's going to drive your social media marketing. So you post that podcast, you can share that every single week. People can comment on it. Someone can share it from, that goes to your church, and then their friends have the opportunity to see it and then ask a question and then get invited. Lots of good stuff. Also, it doesn't just have to be like the full podcast. Like, you can really take one sermon and create a lot of content and really get the most out of it. So not only do you produce the content, you can cut up pieces, little sound bites, and post. Another thing is, if you're going to take the time to make a podcast, also put it on YouTube. And I suggest taking the time, like, to have someone actually open it up in a video editor, listen to it, and as you're talking about things, like putting images in there, or if you can, record it. That's even better, obviously. If you have a camera, you can record the entire message, post that right to YouTube, enhance it by having someone go through and adding, clips in and stuff to support what you're talking about. But worst case scenario, if you don't, and all you have, I mean, if you have a cell phone, you can put it on the pulpit and record, and that works perfectly fine 9 out of 10 times. Take that, put it in a video editor, at the very least, take your church logo and stretch it out over the whole timeline, export it out as a video, render it out as a video, put it on YouTube. That gives you one more place to share the content. But if you can, like I said, take the time. So if you're talking about something, if you're talking about whatever, if you're talking about finances, Google, as you playback, listen to it, and as you hear what the pastor's talking about, or if you're doing your own, go find images, go Google search images to put in there, so it's, it's changing. There's a visual to go with it. Vines. Vines are incredibly popular. If you don't know what Vines are, it's a social site-ish, I guess, where you can record and share 6-second video clips. You may be thinking, especially as a pastor, right? Like, what can you do in 6 seconds? You can get creative with it. So there's ways you could take a 6-second quote. So you could go through one sermon, and you could so if you're producing a sermon every single Sunday, you could go through and find 7 6-second quotes from your message, produce them out as vines, and that's a vine every single day. You could go through and cut up more than that and share more than once a day on your social networks. But that's one way, is to out of your sermon, you just came up with a very short amount of time. Like, you already are doing the sermon, so you just put another hour or two into actually listening back, finding these 6-second clips, scheduling those out as vines, which then you can also post onto your Facebook page. You can also post these videos on YouTube if you'd like. Content for the entire week with just a couple hours. So there's lots of ideas there. Quotes on images. So you're finding these little 6-second quotes. take these quotes, that people like to, you go to like district council or you go to these different events and people are twittering, and that's kind of like, like pastors are twittering comments. Well, do the same thing, but get a program like Share as Image. I mean, you could do it with like Photoshop or something, but you get something like Share as Image or PicMonkey, which it's a lot faster. Get a background image or even just a solid color. Post the quote, put it, put quotation marks, put dash in the pastor's name. So if it's you, you'd still just do it as if it was, a quote, even though you're doing it of yourself. And then share that image on Twitter, share that on Instagram, which is obviously catering towards a younger crowd. So if you're looking to attract the younger college age, young adults, that type of stuff, young marrieds, create a Twitter account, post those on Twitter account. So you can see right there, just from your sermon that you're already doing, that's tons of content you could be producing every single week. Like you could have multiple pieces of content going out every single day for the entire week off of just one sermon. So coming up with content is not the idea. And then there's all these other examples. Same thing with your Bible studies, taking your notes and posting those out as blog articles, outlines, how-to guides. So if you're going, like people have questions, man. Like they don't want to step into a church maybe, but at the same time they're searching. They have questions. There's, hot button issues. So, and not just like theological debates, but like first off, parenting. It's hard, right? Like you see videos all the time of epic fails of parenting. So people are out there like, how do I be a parent? Maybe their marriage is struggling. How do I be a better husband? How do I keep my marriage from falling apart? Create these how-to videos, or not videos, but how-to articles. This is extremely popular in the business world where you just write an article of how to do something. You teach people something, which solves a problem they have, which helps build that know, like, trust. So, if figure out for your area. So where you are, if there's a lot of gang violence, maybe write some articles about how to get out of being in a gang, how to be successful, how to have a happy life, how to overcome violence, all these kind of things. If in an area, I was youth pastored in a town that had a lot of drug use and a lot of teens who didn't really have a good home. So, I could have been writing articles about, how to be happy when, in a broken family. That's kind of a negative topic. I'd suggest more of a positive, but, how to overcome, how to rise above using, just whatever. Obviously it has to be something interesting that has to be answering a problem they actually have. But because obviously if you start writing articles about, how to properly take communion, the general population of your town probably isn't going to be too interested. So that's another way. You can even have other people do this for you. You got people who are getting up every morning and doing their Bible studies, especially if you have people, or if your church does the whole SOAP method, where you take one scripture, you do the application, and they go through and they write down and they're journaling all those things. That can easily be converted into a blog post, and blog posts don't have to be super long. It could be 200-300 words of a few staff members taking their SOAP journals. You could have, if you have a staff, even if it's just the traditional like a part-time secretary and a youth pastor, right? That's 3 of you. If each of you once a week took your journaling and converted it once a week, that doesn't take that much time. Once a week, convert a journal article into a little 200-300 word blog post. That's 3 days of content right there for your blog. So you now have a blog that's putting out content 3 days a week. And this is stuff that shows up. The purpose of this, not only to build the know, like, trust, and they get to know you, but this is all content that is out there for the search engines to find. So if someone, let's go back to Austin, Texas. Someone's in Austin, Texas. Maybe they're not looking for a church. This is part of dominating the search engines. So let's say they're not looking for a church, but let's say they're looking to get out of debt. And you happen to, your church does financial peace. And let's just say either you or a staff member is kind of a finance geek, right? You get into that. You like Dave Ramsey, you listen to his stuff, you read his books. That's your thing, right? Write about it. So then when someone's looking, in Austin, Texas, and they're looking how to get out of debt, there's the option. So not only for around the world, but like Google, the majority of the time, especially on mobile, is going to know they're in Austin, Texas, and if they can then find posts from your church website, which is also Google knows is in Austin, Texas, about this stuff, it can show up and they can find it, they can link back to your website and then go, hey, look, this church has a program called Financial Peace, all about how to get out of debt. Oh, it's only $100 for a 12-week course, $99 or whatever. Oh, that's a lot cheaper than the $2,200 that I was looking at this other debt consolidation company was going to charge me. Let me go check it out. You can start to attract and that's just one example. I mean, anything you do, you could see how it could turn into, you just start writing about it, and of course it has to be relevant, and then people could find this stuff when they're searching for other things, not just how to find a church, for a church, like they can start linking back and again, building that know, like, trust, which is going to greatly increase your chances of getting them to your church for a service. Same thing, I'm going to go through some of these quickly because I've kind of spent a lot of time on this. Announcements. I mean, you can turn announcements into great content. I mean, even something as boring as announcements. I mean, you got video announcements, which can be done super creatively. I've been in charge of these multiple times, and I used to have fun with them. I am a video guy, so we do sketches. I'd throw in, I'd find little simple animation programs and do animations. I would have my youth students who are interested in stuff, like I'd get them involved, and we'd do little sketch videos that were funny to do the announcements. And it's one more thing. It can be as simple as just having someone in your office, giving them, obviously, and just producing like a nice little video announcements, and that becomes a video to post out. It gives you something to share, people to get into. Testimonies. This one is not utilized enough. There's something, I think we've lost the power of testifying in the church. I remember when I was a kid, when I grew up, Sunday nights, and we'd start off before the pastor would preach. A lot of times, even like in the preliminaries, it would be, someone stand up and testify. Someone give a testimony. What's God's doing in your life? And we'd have like 15, 20 minutes of people standing up and testifying and giving these testimonies what God was doing in their life. Why not record that? I mean, it can be, you can have people come in. It can be when people are sending, emails into the church, just giving testimonies that you could then, obviously with their permission, share those as blog posts, as status updates. You can actually do a video series where you have people come in and giving testimonies. And if you have issues with people not wanting to and being shy, do it on yourself first. Like, get you and your staff to start doing it so they can see and do a good job, and they can see, be more comfortable with it, so they don't feel like they're going to just, look stupid. It's got a lot of people's fear of being on camera, and that's powerful, man. Like, if you're sitting now, again, going back to someone in, let's say someone in Austin, Texas, just in your city, right? And they're down, they're depressed, they got their problems and whatever's going on, and they're on Facebook, and all of a sudden they see this video about the smiling person, with a good headline about, something that God's done. They watch it, and they're like, what, I want that too. It's one more way for them to see that, and those are powerful. You post those every a couple times a week, and people start to see that. And this can be really simple. So I was just recently at an event where the guy actually had his own backdrop. Like, it was just, he ordered up like a little vinyl, just his business name, just repeated, watermarked all over it. It was just on a little backdrop, to where he'd have it set up, and he could, at the end of sessions, could actually have people go over, stand in front of it, so he didn't have to worry about like funky hotel backgrounds or people in the background. It would just be a white backdrop with his logo watermarked all over it, and they would give a little like testimony basically about what they were getting out of the event. I mean, you could do the same thing. You could set up a little corner in your church, and every Sunday after service, you could have people go over there and record something and do little interview stuff and have tons of content off of this. So the ideas, I mean, literally the possibilities are limitless with this stuff. I mean, you can convert them to blog articles. There's so many things you can do. Okay, so I've already covered the fact that it's easy to come up with it. So the two excuses I'm anticipating you're going to have, if you have them, or if you're excited about it, you're going to see as obstacles is, how do I come up with this content? How do I do this stuff? I've already taken care of that. I've shown you ways to easily, for just very little time, creating tons of content. And then, okay, time. That's the other thing. So you now know how to create it, but then, I mean, some of the stuff does take time. I mean, if you're going to produce a really good, take your videos of your service and do a really good job, they can take several hours a week. There's a good chance you don't have that time. So here's a few ideas. Repurpose what you already have, and I've kind of gone into that. So you're not out there trying to create a brand new podcast where you're having to come up with topics and interview people. You're using your sermons. You can repurpose stuff you already have, and I've gone through that quite well. Secondly, get volunteers. You may not have time. I gave the story about how my pastor basically said, hey, you're in film school. Can you take over the media department? So he didn't have to do anything. Yeah, it took him a couple conversations because I said no at first. So I think, we talked a couple times about it. And then once I read it, he would just occasionally, we'd have meetings. Oh, hey, I have an idea, or this or that. It took very little time of his. I was doing all the work. I was the one spending, the 6 hours a week editing the video and getting it down to the TV station. So, get volunteers. People want to do this stuff. And here's the thing. You may be thinking, I don't have anyone in my church. Here's a common thing. I'm, in a small town or a mountain town or a valley town or whatever. We don't have a lot of technology savvy people. Teach them or invest in some training. It's not that hard. If you want to take your service and make it a podcast so people can listen to, and you don't have anyone who knows how to do that in your church, Google how to make a podcast. Go spend $50, $100, a couple $100, whatever. Pick whichever training thing you like best. Get 2 or 3 volunteers. Have them go through it, and you've now got 2 or 3 volunteers. That simple. It's not super expensive. You can get my buddy Cliff Ravenscraft has a How to Podcast program, which is I think around $1,000. That's pretty expensive. There's a lot. There's even free articles, so it's not hard. Where there's a will, there's a way. And then secondly, I put down here, I couldn't think of a good name, so I just put find a Jared Elrod, which is obviously myself, or Ryan Conley. Ryan Conley has a show called Film Right. He does, and it's a weekly show. They do just produce amazing content. And what I mean by this is, first off, like I said, I couldn't find a good catchphrase for this example, but basically, I started off doing the media for my church, but then I had ideas. I was coming up with stuff. I was creating, I started having ideas for, let's have an awesome intro to the show. Let's produce these extra videos. I started creating extra content for our services. So, we're in staff meeting, and pastor's we need volunteers for our bus ministry. We bought these 2 buses. We got them set up, but we've only got 1 driver. So we can only use 1 bus, and we have 1 driver. So if he ends up not being able to make it, so they're so 2 Sundays ago, he had to go visit his mom because she was not doing well. So for 2 weeks while he was out of town, we didn't have our bus ministry going, and people couldn't get to church. So I thought, hey, I have an idea. I went out and created a video. I made this fun video. I used my creativity, and it wasn't just a regular announcement. And I made, in my opinion, at the time, this really awesome video that got people interested in being involved in the bus ministry. And so sure enough, it raised interest. So people were asking, what does it take to be involved in the bus ministry? What would I need to do? I'm not comfortable becoming a driver, but what else can I do to help out? They just got people asking. And that was all because I had bought into, obviously, the vision of the church. And I was wanting to create more stuff. I was already doing the show, which, to be honest, just producing the show as a TV series or, in this case, a podcast or whatever, it gets a little boring and monotonous, so you want to do other things. Give them creative license to do fun stuff like that. I put Ryan Conley on here because they started out, they have this, like I said, the show Film Right. It's hilarious. It's like their full-time job. They get sponsored by huge companies to put ads on their show because they've got so many viewers, teaching people how to do film effects and make short films and stuff like that. But they started out, it's him and his brother and their friends, and they started out making videos for their youth group. And if you actually follow their story, they ended up kind of leaving because the youth pastor just wasn't utilizing them. They were wanting to do more things, and they were testing the envelope. They were wanting to get more creative and into stuff, and the youth pastor just didn't have the time for it. And obviously I don't know the whole story, but basically they were being underutilized. So they went off and they created a web series, and then it ended up getting picked up by a network, and it's now super popular, one of the number ones out there in that category. So, I was the same way. I was producing stuff. I was spending tons of time doing stuff. Ryan and his brother Josh were doing the same thing. Find those people you have in your church. And again, they don't have to even know. Just train them. Give them the opportunity. You find a young guy who's interested in filmmaking, and you buy him a couple pizzas and some Mountain Dew and put him in front of a computer with $50 worth of training. You'll be amazed at the results, the return on that investment you're going to get. So that's another way to, and you could literally just hand it over to them. You could go buy a little recorder or use your phone, upload it, use your phone, get Dropbox on your smartphone, record your message after service, click on that file to go over to your Dropbox folder, have it in a special folder that you also have shared with your Jared or Ryan, and then when they get home from lunch, that file is uploaded and downloaded to their hard drive, and then they can go to town. They can take the audio, they can put it as the podcast, add the intro and the outro and all the stuff, all the church information, announcements. They can break it up into pieces. They can create a video version out of it and do all kinds of crazy stuff. One thing I didn't mention too is to utilize the audio. If you don't know if you've never heard of sermon jams, go to YouTube and type in a popular speaker's name and then put like sermon jam, and you'll see where they take their sermons, cut the pieces down. So it's anywhere from a 3-minute to like a 6-7 minute video, and they put in really good motion graphics and make these amazing pieces of content that are super popular and are easy to go viral. Get your Jared or Ryan excited, and they can start doing stuff like that. So there's that. See what's next. Okay, number 2. So that's all about creating content. So the second point is, how do we take that, right? So we get people coming to our website, or we get people who are already coming to our website, and we get them interested. So we've got that know, like, trust factor. How do we build on that, and how do we get some way to contact them, some way to keep them around? Because they can come, or they can read an article, and then totally forget about it and leave. How can we re-engage them and get them down that whole concept with the ultimate income out? I don't know what I'm trying to say. The ultimate goal of showing up on a Sunday, and then really the ultimate goal of, my goal is to get through this point to the third point, but the ultimate goal for you is to get them as an actual member of the church. Okay, so first off, you want to capture as many emails as possible. Think of email addresses as blank check. That's a horrible example. Think of your favorite game. Let's use the example of Mario, right? You go through the Mario game. Obviously, you want to get to the end, but like your secondary objective is just grabbing coins. Grab as many coins as possible. I mean, sometimes you don't even know why. Obviously, if you get 100, you get a new life. But a lot of times it seems like you're not even focused on it. It was just that grab coins. I don't know why I'm going on this tangent. Anyways, you want to think of email addresses as coins in Mario or Sonic the Hedgehog or one of those old games, and go for the email address. A friend of mine, Noah Kagan, he's got a company called AppSumo. And when he started it just from a laptop from his couch. It's now a multi-million-dollar company. I mean, they've got, this was a while back. Last I heard, they had like over 750 email addresses they'd gotten that people had given them, and that they could sell to. Last year in 2014, they created a plugin for websites, and they got 1 billion people to install it on their website. So this guy's just killing it in the world of business and success and influence. So he started his website, and he said, okay, I'm going to focus on one metric, just one thing, and that's going to be emails. I want to gather people's emails. So he actually put up a gateway on his website to where before you could even get in to look at the products they were selling, you had to put your email address in. And then so the whole idea is you get their email address. That gives you a way to contact them. So if they read your blog article and you can get them to put their email, and I'm not saying put it up to where people can't. That would be a horrible idea for a church. It worked for him. It would be a horrible idea for a church where people can't see your site until they put their email address in. So the concept, though, you get their email address, so they're in the time of need, right, and they find that article and they read it. For whatever reason, you got to figure out, we'll talk about this a little bit, they put their email address in, and then you send out an email, and then it builds that relationship, and they start coming to church down the road, when before they would have probably never remembered to go back and check out your stuff. So it's super important. Focus on that first, getting the emails. And then with email, the thing is, obviously, you want as much information as possible, but the more information you ask for, the less you lower your chances of actually getting any information. So if you put up a form where you want their first name, you want their last name, you want the email, you want their phone number, you want their address, you want to know what they're interested in, are they, like those visitor cards, children's ministry, men's ministry, recovery ministry, whatever it is, right? You put all this stuff. Don't require all that. Just get their email. If you want, you can get the name and email. You are going to reduce the amount you get by even just throwing in name. That's fine if you really want that, but I suggest at least getting the email. And then the whole idea is, as it goes on, let's see what's next. Okay, so as you go on in this relationship, you get more information from them. So as you have more interaction, think of it as a sales, the sales funnel here. So we see up here, this is just people coming to your website, and then you want to move from here, people coming to your website, to getting their email, right? Let's just think this whole thing as the information. So this first one represents getting their email. Down here represents, that you have all the information you need, what you decide on. Let's just say for this purpose it's first name, last name, email, phone number, so you can call them, an address, so you can mail them like an invitation to church. You start off with the email. You're gonna, you get a lot of emails. As they interact with your site and the stuff you're doing, then you get more information. You get their name, and then down here name and phone number. And then you get to that name, phone number, and address. And as they interact, they start to know you more. They start to like you more. And they start to trust you more. So you give more and more information. And so the idea is they come first. They're not going to want to fill out that huge form. You build on it. Okay. And you got to think, so you're thinking, how am I going to get them to give me this information? Well, what's in it for them? Think of WIFT. What's in it for them? So in the world of online marketing and online business, you create what's called a free offer. So it's an e-guide, a free report, a webinar, something like that, a coupon code, something of value that people would want that you give them in exchange for getting their email address. And then once you get their email address, you build up the rapport, that know, like, trust factor, and eventually they're going to buy from you. So in this example, you need to think of what is it that someone would be interested in, and it's a little more of a challenge with the church because you're obviously not selling something. Maybe you have a coffee shop, you could give the coupons away, but that's probably not the best. Anyways, you'd have to think of for yourself what your free offer would be to gather their email. Just putting up a thing saying, hey, please give us your email, doesn't work very well. And there are things, and I forgot to put this in the presentation, but I was talking about my buddy Noah. Go search SumoMe, and it's a bunch of plugins. Most of them are free, and they actually have plugins that will help you gather emails. They'll have things to where the main one is like a little pop-up will come up, and you can put in your own message and get people's emails, and that's going to increase. I think on average they were seeing like a 60% increase in people who were installing it of email signups. So that's huge. They have other things. So if they're reading your blog and they scroll all the way to the bottom, when they get to the bottom, there's a little thing that will pop up here in the bottom right that says, oh, gee, you can put your text in, but it can be like, oh, if you enjoyed that, enter your email, get updates on new articles, blah, blah, blah. There's a bunch of different ways to basically capture people's email. Do that. That's going to help, but you also want to have a free offer. And again, I can't tell you what it's going to be. I can just tell you that you have to figure it out, and you really focus on what's in it for them. Because if you come up with like a fancy brochure about your church as your free offer, they're not going to care. In fact, that would be a little irritating that you would make them give you their information before you're going to send it to them. It can be, though, something to where you can do it to where, hey, get this sent to your email address. There's a lot of things you can do, and I'm not going to go into that too much because it's so many ideas for a specific situation of what you could do. And if you have more information about this, because this is a big deal, message me or something. My email's Jared, 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 stands for Nathaniel, which is my middle name, Elrod, Elrod, @gmail.com, and I'd be willing to jump on Skype or whatever and talk to you. This is actually one of my businesses, Nate Ideas, actually specializes in helping people do this. So I work with businesses. So if you want to sit and brainstorm, I'll spend 30 minutes with you on Skype helping you out with that because I don't have time to go in it here, and it is such a key factor. Okay, then secondly, I want to talk about autoresponders a little bit. So once you get their email address, and an autoresponder actually could end up being part of your free offer if you can create it as valuable enough. But what you're going to do then is you're going to create what's called an autoresponder, and essentially that's just a fancy way of saying that, like, when they sign up for email, you have pre-written emails that are timed to go out to them. They're so powerful. So here's some ideas of what you could create, and you can create multiple of them, right? So it's not like you just have one. So you get leads from your website. Someone puts their email address. You have a specific autoresponder, which is a sequence of emails that get sent out over a period of time to show, to get people to then come and visit. So a good idea of doing this, and I set one up for a church, and it was basically introducing them to the church. The church is very unique in the fact that they only met every other Sunday. They were really strong in life groups that met every week, and there's less emphasis put on their Sunday services. And so we were introducing this concept, and we were introducing the culture of the church. And so the whole idea was, if they show up and visit on a Sunday and we get their email address, or they visit the website, we had a 7-day cycle that we were sending them emails every day. You don't have to do it every single day, but sending them emails every day for 7 days to then get them back the next Sunday. And in our case, it was letting them know that there wasn't actually church that next Sunday, not to show up. It was really a challenge doing the marketing for that. But anyways, and so you could use that to get them from just being a lead because they read a blog. So how this works is they get to your website because they found an article or a piece of content you put out. They enjoy the content. You have some sort of free offer, so they give you their email address. From their email address, they go on an autoresponder, which is going to be tailored to the situation of how they came into this funnel of, it's normally called a sales funnel, but this would be we'll just call it a visitor to member funnel. And then that's going to kind of help and coach them into getting to a service. And then there'd be, once they actually visit, I suggest having, we'll talk about this in part 3, having a separate funnel to getting them to continually visiting, so they're not just a one-time visitor. So, okay, so it leads from website. First-time visitors. So that's what I was just mentioning, actually. So once they visit, someone visits your church, they fill out an information card, you get their email address, a certain set of emails going out to them, so that way they show up again next week, or show up on Wednesday to youth with their kids, whatever it is. It's obviously going to be tailored towards you. And then joined a small group or Bible study, so you can have a specific one going out for that. A new members class, this is a great use of it here, I think. So someone signs up for a new members class. You've got emails going out to them every week, every day, whatever. You can actually put a lot of your content, because a lot of times those classes, you're trying to pack in so much stuff. Generally, it's done like during the Sunday school hour or whatever, and you only have short sections. You have so much content you want to teach them. This is a great way to send some of it out through an autoresponder. And of course, kids and youth ministry. So you've got kids visit your youth group for the first time, or you got parents drop their kids off and information and whatnot for the first time. Great way. So if they registered a kid into the nursery and you get the email from them, it's pretty safe to say they have kids and they're interested in the kids ministry. They can go out on an autoresponder that's educating them about how awesome your kids ministry is. So, and like I talked about, that's a big fear and a big thing that can turn people away, is not having a good kids ministry. So that's a great way to show why and how your kids ministry is so good. Okay, so now talking about Sunday visitors into members. This is the third promise I made you I'm going to talk about. So basically the whole idea, just like in traditional or in online business and marketing, we have what are called sales funnels. And I already kind of went over this a little bit with getting leads from your website traffic, where I said about email, and then getting down here to having all the contact information you want and having a funnel to drive them through it. Same thing. If you have someone show up on Sunday, what is your goal? What is your plan? Do you have a plan to get them coming some more, or do you just have them fill out a visitor's card and say, hey, thanks, and then just hopefully come again? Maybe it's, you make a phone call. Someone calls them that week. Maybe someone shows up at their house. I don't know. But what's your plan? First off, having a plan to getting them from, okay, step 1. So there's a whole other funnel like before this, right, about getting people to your website and then getting them from not knowing about you at all. We'll just use this example. Not knowing about you at all the way to they're on your website and they've entered their information, right? And then there's a whole nother funnel of, okay, so they've entered their information to your website. Now you want to get them to a Sunday service down here. Boom, 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 all the steps, right? So now we're on the third piece. right here. They just showed up for a Sunday service, and you got their information, visitor card, whatever. And then the next thing is, what are all these steps? Because then you get down here to, you want them to show up again next Sunday. And then ultimately, that's your first goal, right? Show up again next Sunday or to the midweek service. But you want them to show up again, so they're not a one-time visitor. Show up again. And then ultimately, you're going to have another funnel that's going to want them to go from, okay, so they've been coming to our church. Maybe it's a couple times a month. Maybe it's every single week. Now we want them down here as a member. And ultimately, you'd even want to have another one for members to get down to being involved in some sort of personal ministry, right? So you got to think about, like, what are the processes you're going to have? Because if you can really break this all down into sections and get really good and really organized at this. And so your process for taking someone who's logging or going to google.com to look for a church or look for a solution, all the way to how you're going to get them to being involved in your church and being fulfilled in ministry and making more disciples. So yeah, it sounds overwhelming, but really at the same time, if you're not doing this, I think that's more overwhelming because you're just guessing and you're running around. Someone shows up on a Sunday and you're hoping as the senior pastor you have time to make a connection with them, and then you're hoping they come back versus having an actual system to work through it all. Okay, so and autoresponders are a great way. So not only making phone calls and maybe setting up a dinner, taking them out to dinner. All ideas I've heard being used. But another thing is using these autoresponders to keep in contact with them so they show up again. All right, let's move on. Okay, the concept of niching down for success. This is huge in the business world because the idea is people start out and they're going to start a business and they say, okay, so who's your customer? People. Wait, what do you mean? What kind of people? They want to be, right? People have this tendency to go, we want to reach everyone. Our product is great for everyone. I was just talking to a guy the other day. He's done, basically he's similar stuff what Dave Ramsey does, and he's been doing it for quite a long time in seminars and in person. He's, very successful. So he created a course because he wants to get into the online market. And so he was talking to me about helping him with some marketing for this. And so I was teaching him about sales funnels and all, autoresponders, all this kind of stuff. But the main thing was niching down. So because I could see this was a problem for him, I asked him, I said, hey, who is your target market for this product? He said 70% of Americans would qualify as the target for my market. Okay, that's not very specific. 70% of Americans. He's like, well, yeah, if someone's like in crisis mode, like I probably can't help them. But people who have a large amount of debt who aren't in crisis mode, I can help them. And that's, surveys and statistics show that that's 70% of America. I'm like, dude, you're never going to get 70% of America. You need to know who you're marketing to. Are you marketing? He said, well, people with debt who aren't in crisis mode. I'm like, okay. So this sounds like a hostile conversation. By the way, I'm presenting it. It wasn't this way at all. But I don't know why I'm making it sound like we're fighting. I don't know. Maybe it's just more fun. Anyways, so I'm like, okay, so what kind of people with debt? I mean, are you looking at college students? Are you looking at doctors who have a lot of school debt? Are you looking at, who are you looking at? He's like, well, yeah, I can help all of them. I'm like, okay, but here's the thing. You have to focus on one. Doesn't mean you can only work with one, but when you're doing a marketing campaign, you have to focus on one at a time because you can't talk to a doctor like you would talk to a college student and vice versa. So if you create an ad that is the writing, all the language is geared towards a doctor, and your ad goes out and college students are seeing it, they may be interested at first, but they're not going to be interested because of the way you're speaking to them. So jumping back to the church example, first off, we're going to talk about homepage versus, and we're wrapping this up. We're almost done. So homepage versus landing page. Don't assume that just because you have a website and you have your main homepage, that's where you should, first off, don't assume that that's where people are going to end up when they find your site, because there's a very good chance they're going to end up on your blog or an about page or some other resource page that you have. Secondly, don't assume that page, just because it's your beautiful homepage that you've spent hours and hours and hours telling the youth pastor how to set it up or learning how to do it yourself. That was a joke, the youth pastor joke, but anyways, I digress. that's going to just be the magical catch-all that every single person who looks in your church is going to find interesting and show up. In fact, the chance it's very slim that that's going to happen. You need to create what are called landing pages, and this comes down to you're going to need multiple landing pages, because here's the thing. I suspect if I were to ask you who your target audience was, you would say everyone. And if I said, okay, we'll be more specific, you'd say, going back to Austin, well, everyone in Austin. Okay. You need to, and you go like, well, no, we're called, I mean, it's the Great Commission. We're called to reach everyone. So I have a heart for my city. I want to reach everyone. The problem is, if you're trying to reach everyone, you're going to ultimately end up reaching no one. You have to reach certain people at a certain time. I mean, and you know this, because whether you know it or not, because you have specific ministries. You have a youth ministry for youth kids. You have a kids ministry for kids. You have a seniors ministry for seniors. You have a women's ministry for women. You have a men's ministry for men. So you understand it on some level, but then for some reason we're not using it in the way we talk to potential visitors and in our marketing and the way we present ourselves that way. So, and even a lot of times for Sunday services, you'll have a first service, which is more traditional, and a second service, which is more contemporary. So there's obviously, Wednesdays, if you have a Bible study, it's more laid back and low key than Sundays. You understand it in that sense. So the same thing. So if you need to break down, and again, it doesn't mean you can only reach one type of person. That would obviously be foolish to say we're only going to look at young adults and break down all these categories. But you have to be very specific. So jumping down to the next one, general versus specific. So you don't go, we're trying to reach families in Austin, Texas. It's going to look more of like we are trying to reach, and you figure out what kind of families, because then you know how to reach them. So the idea is you need to create a member avatar. In the business world, it's a customer avatar, but so a member avatar. So you're going to know, okay, with this specific ad campaign, we are trying to reach, and you're going to name them even. You're going to say John and Susie Smith. That's a horrible name because it doesn't sound real, but you know what I mean. John and Susie Smith. They have 3 kids, 1 in nursery, 1 in kids church, and then 1 in junior high ministry. They make X amount a year. This is where they live. These are their problems. These are their hopes. These are the things. So then you know how to reach them, right? So if you have an ad that goes out, or you have an elderly couple who's looking for a church come to your site, and you're talking about your kids ministry and your youth ministry, they're not going to be that interested in that. So if you're targeting, maybe Martha and Bob, who are 65 plus, then you're going to talk about the resources and the stuff you have for them. And the idea is, you're going to create, and you have a larger job, because in business you're going to have like 1 customer avatar, maybe 2, maybe 3. But for you basically have to do this for every group that you really find coming. You don't have to do it for every person around, but like the main groups, you're going to have to basically create these member avatars, which represent a large group of the type of people that come to your church, and figure out how to reach them. And then you're going to create a landing page. So if you create a Facebook ad, it's only going to be hitting 1 target niche. So if you're wanting young adults, you make an ad just for young adults, and that ad goes to a landing page that's written just to young adults. If you're going to create an event, an outreach event, I mean, sometimes maybe you can get away with doing like just a full-on whatever family event, but you really need to be targeted with these. So if you're putting on an outreach event, who are you trying to reach? Are you trying to reach kids? Are you trying to reach families? Are you trying to reach senior citizens? Are you trying to reach singles? Are you trying to reach people who do have debt? So maybe you're doing like a Dave Ramsey free event type thing. Like, you got to figure out who it is, and then you're going to have this whole process. You're going to have this process based around that, of what their problems are. So if you want to reach, John and Susie Smith, and in your area, one big need for them is the fact that they are drowning in debt, and you do have a financial peace thing, a program, and counselors and all that good stuff that can help them. Create a marketing campaign around that. Create an event around that, and you're going to know how to talk to them based on who they are. Because it's financial peace, you would talk to. You're doing financial peace. your ads would be different and the way you talk would be different and where you go to find people would be different if you're talking to college students with debt versus young families with debt versus middle-aged families with debt versus senior citizens versus singles, versus you can keep going on and on. So you really have to think of how you can niche down, create these member avatars, and then you drive everything else around that. And you'll start to see they become way more effective, and you'll start to see your events and your ads becoming way more effective. All right, and I believe that is it. That pretty much wraps it up. There's so much more I really could go into, but just for time, that's really all I can reach today. So if you do have any other questions or you need help with anything, again, feel free to shoot me an email, Jared, Jared, N for Nathaniel, Elrod, ELROD @gmail.com. I'd be happy to, shoot you back a quick email. If you really feel like you need to just talk to someone about this, I'll jump on Skype, 20, 30 minutes. I do this professionally. I by no means am trying to do that. I'm doing this just to give back. I'm not trying to make any money on this, so don't think that I'm going to get you on the phone and try to sell you anything. In fact, you would have to convince me to work with you if you were wanting me to help because, again, you're not my target customer. I'm not looking for my business to help churches. I'm doing this as I feel like, I've got all this knowledge. It's almost like it's obviously it's not an actual tithe, but it's almost that concept of, this is my business. Let me do a percentage of my time to give back. Let me do some webinars, and if there's enough interest, maybe I'll create some free resources and stuff. So if you were to watch this and take me up on the offer for a call and wanted to hire me to work with you, it would be hard for you to convince me because, again, you're not my target customer. You're not what I'm trying to do. So you would have to actually sell me on why you should be able to hire me. So don't feel pressured that I'm going to do that. But if you did get a lot of value out of this and you are wanting to, how can you help me? Again, I promise I'm not selling anything, but I am looking for speaking opportunities. So if here's a few places I guess I should start off with. If you'd like me to come to your church and speak to your staff, I would definitely be interested. If you have some sort of district type or denomination type event that you guys, I know in the Assemblies of God, they get together, they have sectional meetings where they'll get together with pastors in the area. I would love to come and speak at anything like that. If you have a community one where the pastors get together, that would be awesome. Or even at a district level. I know a lot of, again, with, in the HE, we'll have breakout sessions. So not only the keynotes, but there's breakout sessions that are more practical and stuff. I'd love to come and speak at something like that about all this kind of stuff, marketing, using this a bit, anything in this presentation or any of the other stuff that I'm experienced in. And you can use the same email address, the jarednelrod@gmail.com, to contact me. Feel free to do an introduction. Just shoot an email over to the person who is in charge of that kind of stuff and just do a quick little, CC me, do a little introduction, whatever. But yeah, so if that's the way you could, if you wanted to help me out, I am looking, you could spread the word if you know of anyone. But with that actually wraps up this presentation. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions, like I said, feel free. Even critiques, if you think I spent too much time in one area or didn't explain something and I breezed over it too much, let me know, because I'm really having a guess of what's going to be, because this is my world, right? So I'm trying to think of, all this stuff seems pretty simple to me because it's what I do. So I'm trying to think of what would be the things you'd want more time in and what would you want me to breeze over. So let me know. Thank you guys so much, and I hope you really got something out of this. It was a lot of fun. Have a great day.